Thank you. There is this powerful essay by David Orr, which is titled "What is Education For?" And one of the key ideas he expresses in that is all education should be about the environment. Well, in reality, we know we are far from it. But what really inspires so many of us is that each one of us is trying to do what we can. So, my question to each one of you is what was the inspiration for your institution? What made you feel the need to integrate nature education in your school?
So I work in Kumarans. Kumarans, we were in Tata Silk Farm, which is in Baswangudi, which is in the heart of the city. Then we moved to this beautiful campus in Malasandra off Kanakpura Road, which is just nestled by the side of the Bannerghatta forest. So that is a beautiful location, and we moved into this campus in 2009. So it was literally like we went from the city to the lap of nature. So, and our building was also designed somewhat similar to this, the concept of not having it taller than a tree or something. We just have 3 levels, not including the lower level. So we believe in that, and we started following a lot of sustainable practices in our school. And being in the heart, I mean, moving from the heart of the city to a place where you're surrounded by nature. Our school overlooks a beautiful lake, and then there's a forest in the boundary. And so it was only natural that we looked at integrating nature curriculum into our curriculum, into our academics. So we started taking children for nature walks instead of making them sit in the classroom and explaining what a plant is, what a shrub is, what a bush or a tree is. So we started taking them out and having classes outside in the nature. Or even if the higher class students want to write a poem, what better way than to make them sit outside and then enjoy the scenic beauty around them and then write a poem which would inspire more. So this is how we started, and slowly it became a little more structured, and we brought in some people who could give more insights to our curriculum. So children started going on nature walks within the campus, a little outside the campus, wherever in the forest area where we were allowed. And this continued year on year, so they could actually see the ecology or the ecosystem of a tree develop, how that tree was planted and then it started growing along with them, and what is the kind of creatures that lived in them. So this year they would see a small bird, next time they would see some more insects there, how each creature made it its home, and how each life is evolving there in the campus itself. And now several of the trees have grown with the children. So as an initiative, what we have done is like we have given names to all the trees. We have put name boards there so that any passerby could also, see the name of the tree, its scientific name, and also where it is most commonly found and what are the special features or its connection to our history. So it's every tree is labeled with the name. So I think that helps the children also just take a walk around the campus and they can imbibe a lot. So it started with that, and now we have more structured curriculum.
Thank you.
It started with 3 little children who were, I think, quite wild, rescuing cats and dogs constantly by lying on the road and peering under cars and pulling them out and bringing them home and saying, please, but please, can we keep it at home, please? Or one child sitting under a tree with a book, refusing to go to class and constantly being punished for it. And she, that girl, happened to read a book called Toto-chan. And that was it. She just wouldn't stop troubling her mother till her mother opened a school. And that's how the school started. And when it started with 3 children, and 3 more very wild children joined straight from the Karjat forest. And much of the school was done on trees. with about birds or I don't think there were, or how do you build with miniature clay bricks that you made? How do you make the Great Wall of China? Things like that. And that's how the school started. And the school has remained very close to nature. I mean, one of the most, I think the school even had at the inception a whole period dedicated to walk, where we walked through. I was one of the earlier children where we walked through these paddies and these fields to get to the Hebba lake. That time it was accessible and you could go. And just, I remember I was 5 and another girl, we would look at insects, these beautiful jewel beetles, and talk about how they're going for a wedding and therefore they're dressed up. And the older ones would be looking at birds and would see these reeds and be like, oh, this is how papyrus must have been made. This is how the Chinese made papyrus for sure. So take them and keep hammering at it. Much of the school was experimental and continues to be. But I think nature was there from the inception, from compassion to animals, to thinking. Of course, the founder has thought very deeply about environment because of her parents, but it continues to be about how do you be compassionate to all beings around you, and how do you then take that compassion and educate yourself so you can continue to bring compassion to the world. I think that's been one of the deep values of the school.
You know, in city life where the nuclear families and their related problems exist, whether it is financial or domestic, environment takes a backseat. So it's very difficult for us to bring in this experience to the students, because the very basic of learning itself is observation. When they lack observation and curiosity, teaching big concepts in the textbooks, and nowadays textbooks teach them anything and everything except nature, the importance of it. So the moment we were doing some small projects, as I said, we were collaborating with IISc, and Dr. T.V. Ramachandra had helped in that case. A lot of time he had come to the school. We had taken part in a lot of awareness programs. Like that, slowly we built up the interest in students. And when we have an eco club class also from Ferns Foundation, and when Archana came from Bhumi College, readily accepted, so that something I wanted to give them. I wanted to know what is nature. So that's it.
Thank you.
I think I'd like to bring in the metaphor of a seed. And if we look at a seed, there can be so many different kinds of seeds. And when we have these seeds together, they grow into a forest of different plants, different flowers. And that is what I think is the inspiration for Prakriya. That nature is expansive, it is whole, and we can only, there's so much of diversity that we need to honor outside and within us. And that is, honoring that immense potential of the child. If I look at the way we work, I think in that honoring of the potential of the child, the potential of our being, it's really about figuring out ways of how do we build with the natural curiosities of the children, how do we work so that we don't, as somebody said, one of our children talked about dumbing down. But how do we inspire, how do we encourage, how do we persuade, how do we push, the natural being of the child to learn, the natural being of the child to pick up things. So that is one inspiration. Another is, as a school, we have been process-centric, which is again nature's way. And I think that means a lot of questioning and looking at what is it that we really want? Do we want, how do we look at the process of learning? How do we look at if there's been a fight, a big fight in the classroom? How do we sort it out? Do we want to just go in and shout at the children, or do we want to have a circle time so that we dialogue and we discuss? So there are multiple things that come in when we look at a process-centered way of life. And I think all of us who come into school, I've said this many times before because it's something that I, really strongly believe in. There's no way to not feel inspired just by coming in every day into the space. And I think for children who start with us at 3.5, 4 years old and who continue till 16, that what they pick from just coming here day in and day out, whether they learn anything, I'm sure they learn a lot of things in the classroom as well, but what they pick from this space, just being here, being free, I think that's nothing counts more than that. And when one gets that space, when one gets that honoring of the spirit, the action to love, right? To act out of love for the world around us, for nature, for one another, I think that becomes natural and it just happens. So yeah, I think those were some of the things. One more thing I want to share, sorry Rama, is one thing that I really value about Prakriya is also the community, the way we are as a community. While we come in as students, we come in as teachers, facilitators, and administrators, and all of that, and we have our support staff, our drivers. There's a strong sense of community, and a community that also believes in something. I think that is palpable to all of us, and it's always happening to see, even our akkas telling us, okay, we can't waste paper, we'll cut it into half, we'll cut it into, those kinds of things, or one-sided paper, and small things like that make a big difference.
The nature education or connecting to nature is important is not easily, accepted or acknowledged. So it is a challenge, and some of us are braving that challenge and still continuing. So if you could share some of the challenges and also how you have worked with them. Sometimes parents come back or whatever. So what are the challenges and how have you worked with those challenges?
Here I would like to go first, because the first challenge we face when it is coming to environment or anything related to nature is the emotional disconnection from the parent side as well as the student side. As I said, they see nature as something different and they are on the other side. Nature is on the other side, they are on the other side, and they are studying about all these things which are in the textbook. There is no first-hand experience, especially in city schooling students. And I'm not talking about the elite schools. When you ask, in our case, it is the school for lower middle class. Those who are in 40s, definitely they have some kind of thing. But the new generation teachers, I don't know, madam will agree with me or not, but yeah, it's a little difficult for us because they are technologically advanced. But when it comes to nature, they lack the depth. That's what I felt.
To some extent, what she says is true, because parental expectations always hovers around the success as in terms of marks and all that. So they come and say, okay, all this is fine, but at the end of the day, what happens to my maths, English, physics, chemistry? So I think that is a real challenge, and we have to integrate it and ensure that we balance both. So I think, it's not her school, as she was saying, the background is different. Ours is slightly different. As I said, our campus helps, and so we could do a lot of it without spending too much time within the school campus. So we can do a science lesson outside in the campus, do a role play where, some give a humorous skit to it, saying, if you want to talk about teamwork, or give values-based lessons outside in the ground, so that the children are in nature. So that kind of a disconnect, I wouldn't say, but it's like sometimes I feel it's like a switch off, switch on, because when they go home, they are in their own cocoons, in their apartments, in their, in a gated community. So how exactly they relate it and take back. But what we have observed is like children do come back to us and say that, whatever they picked up in school still stays with them. So it's not, I won't dismiss it as saying that, it is not sunk in. It does sink in at some point. But regarding getting people, that we have not faced that kind of a challenge to bring in more people. And in our school also we have, as STP, and where we do recycle water and we take the children around, so it becomes a way of life for them. And we have, dustbins everywhere to segregate waste. So it does become a habit, and children do come back and tell us that at home also we insist that it is done like that. So it's not entirely challenging, but yes, the academic pressure, when the children, especially when they move into grades 9 and 10, then the parents feel we can, we are better off giving them more revision, making them, train up for the exams and scoring their 90s and 98s, and why not 100 also. So that becomes the target. So that is one of the main challenges.
Yeah, I think for us it's also maybe not exactly the same, but there are shades of that coming in, especially when it comes to as we go into the high school. But just to add to that, the other point that you talked about, the teachers, the difficulties of finding teachers who are naturally inclined. I think when I joined, I too was completely, this was the first time I was in a school like this. I had never studied in a school like this, and it was always restrictive. And so when I joined, it was a learning, a journey for me too as a teacher, and I see that also continuing for a lot of us, because it's also the truth for many of us who are in the teaching community. And therefore, I think the challenge is finding that the training, the learning curve is not fast, right? It's a slow process, and therefore that is something that is a challenge for us, because parents do demand, and as a school also, our belief system also demands a certain way of working, and sometimes it may not always work like that. So, yeah.
So when I first came back to Purna, which was 2 years ago, I think my first question, my class is, how many of you can climb a tree? And many of them said, we can't, we don't. So I can, or something like that. And then I said, but okay, that your homework is climb a tree. This one said, well, I'll fall off. I said, but then you're not climbing it well. Try again till you learn how to climb a tree. And so that was my homework, because I really don't believe in homework. 8 hours you're here in school. You should go out and do other things after school. So I think that was the challenge, the fear. I mean, I remember us up trees and jumping ditches and throwing mud and exploring. I think there's a lot of fear now, with an anxiety around freedom and children just being free. I think there is a lot of fear, and I think that removes the agency of a child. And if children are not questioning, why am I here and what am I learning and why do I learn this and why is math a separate discipline from art, and why, because I see math around me, if that questioning is not there, and that is worrying. And I do see that as one of the challenges. The passivity of maybe a generation, because there's a lot of information perhaps that they're exposed to, or that. So I do believe if we can give back the agency to a child or to children to decide, for them to decide what is it they want to learn. It may not be about nature, it may be about diggers or whatever, you may think, oh God, why are they? But I think agency is very key to create change or to create informed change. So I think that's one of the challenges I see, is a lack of agency in the structure of the school system. We remove agency very quickly from children because we need to manage. In the classroom, when there are 40 kids yelling, you need to manage. So you say, oh, please, keep quiet. These are the rules. You raise your hands only. But that strips the child of agency. So I think I'm still grappling. I don't have any idea of how to get around it, but I'm grappling with the idea of how do we let children be free. I mean, I'm no one to let children be free. They are free, but how do we continue to create spaces where they can be free and think freely? And of course, parents, how do we bring them into this idea that their children are free? They are free to think as well, and their ideas are important, and they are a part of this community. It's not something, I don't want it to become an us versus them with parents. Together, we are kind of messing around with this generation. No one knows if this is the right way or that is the right way, but we're trying. And I think that experimentation and that trying, that to get people to open up to the idea that there is no end goal in learning. It's not that 12th is the last goal. I hope they learn. I hope we all keep learning forever. And I hope parents also keep learning. So these mindsets, I think, is a challenge, that till 12 they have to learn everything, till 10 they have to learn everything, and they have to do it well. And I'm like, why not? Why? They'll keep learning. So maybe just give them some ideas and something like that, and it's okay. So I think these are the challenges we face.
Thank you. Very varied responses, but there is some thread going through each one. The last question, maybe we can make it quick, because I think that's clearly the question for hope. There are challenges, but I'm sure each one of us finds a way, to work through that. So what next? What more?
See, as a decision maker, when it is coming to school academics or other activities, I think the management can cooperate in this regard, where all they can reduce and that 3 hours they can follow. For example, in our school we don't give notebooks. We don't impose. Even last year's notebooks, if they have extra pages, they can continue in that. Because paper is one of the precious things, we have taught them that. And paper waste management in the schools we have taught them. So we have agents to go around the classrooms and check the waste and to do the campaign. Water auditing we have done. And even the wash basins and aquarium, we have a large aquarium. All those water we are recycling in the limited space. We have only 15 into 20 soil space, but in that we have so many trees, like including guava. So it's not that we don't have anything, we have only this facility, we are not keeping in that, within that limit, whatever. So in small school like ours, we can do that. So the ones who have campus, they can still do better. And of course, encouraging organizations like this. Thank you.
I think I'll start with a challenge again and take it from there. The challenge of, I think when I spoke earlier about, let's say, working with teachers, is also a challenge of time. And I think that time is something that we need to decide on how do we really want to spend it. And Chong had also asked this question. Do you really believe in this, and do you really want to work with it? And sometimes I think as leaders and as a community, we need to really review, look at what is education for, what is really important, and how do we want to spend the time that we have on a daily basis, how do we want to structure our day. I think these are important things because I see us running. And so what more, what next? One is internally, I think, for us to really look at how we spend our time and what is it that we want. Um, although we're doing good work, but there's more that we can definitely do. Secondly, what more, what next? This conference and the one last year and with TFN, I think there are more schools now who are coming together with the same belief, and I think we need to maintain that momentum and hold that thread to extend this community, because teachers are looking for that, and all of us and our students are looking for it. So how do we build that community? I think that's something that's also there.
I think we are in this era of Gen AI, and everything is in our fingertips. And if a children want to see a forest, I think all they need to do is press a button and it's there on their screens. I think somewhere the challenge is to wean them away from that and show them the real world where they can see that and not see everything on their screens. So if right now, like today, if you ask a child to play cricket, they might end up playing cricket virtually with their friends. So I think the actual challenge lies in weaning the children away from whatever is their digital world. And I think that helps, that has made them more disconnected. So when they are with us in our care, at least in the schools, we should ensure that we show them that connect. So I think that is what we need to work at, how to make ourselves relevant in this digital age where Gen AI, because I'm sure whatever they are learning or whatever textbooks that we have, that can be taught to them by any digital assistant that they have on their phones. So what is it as teachers, as schools, that we add to their curriculum in terms of the values, in terms of how to live in a sustainable way, caring for others? I think that is what the gadgets cannot do. So I think our real challenge and the real way ahead lies in that, in exploring more avenues where the children can explore and learn, and also learn to be more humane in their approach and not just be confined to a screen.
So, yeah, this is a difficult one. I think first it would start with me. I think what change I would like to, I think there are many things about myself that I need to deeply reflect and change. But also then with the school, if we can get people to deeply reflect but act quickly and experiment along the way. If both adults and children, I don't see the difference. I think we both have to engage. I think as the previous generation, we have a lot that we have done wrong and we can do right, and we can act again and we can keep going. But I think for the youngers to enable them to think deeply, to give them time to think deeply, to have the leisure to play and create through play. And then to empower them. I think you said with digital AI, but I also, and I agree with you, but to empower them to create either with their hands through carpentry skills or pottery or gardening, but to empower them to create. It could be even just to repair their mobile phone that's broken. The power of being able to fix something of your own and not giving it to someone else. The power to stitch your own clothes, the power to build your own homes. Like I was speaking to someone in the discussion and he said, I came across someone who built their own home with their own hands, a mud home. That was so empowering for me to see. So to empower them with those ideas and ourselves, to know that it is possible to grow your own food, to stitch your own clothes, to create the things that you consume by yourself while thinking deeply about these processes and the things you do, and being connected to what you consume and what you make. I think for me, if we can move in that direction, and do it with compassion. I don't think any generation is worse than the previous one or vice versa, but do it with compassion for each other. And I hope that that's something we can do well.
So thank you so much.